So in this video, I'm going to be going over how to sew in general and specifically how to use a sewing machine. All the basics and then some. I'll also be going over how to use all the items from my previous video, going over what supplies you'll need and some that you may want to get started sewing. So if that intrigues you, stick around. Hey y'all, I'm Crystal and this is For the Love of Fabric. So basically this is going to be like a crash course sewing adventure, okay, because to be honest with you, I don't really know what I'm doing, but I'm trying, you know, we're learning together here, okay? So bear with me and hopefully you'll get something out of this. I recommend that you go ahead and read through your sewing manual as soon as you get your sewing machine, or if you already have one, because your machine is not going to be exactly like mine. Most machines will be similar in function though. I have a link to a really great brother machine in the description down below, and this is a machine that will actually grow with you as you become more experienced as a seamstress. It comes with, let's see here, an LCD display, 60 stitch patterns, 7 presser feet, that's awesome, an automatic needle threader, a thread cutter on the left hand side, and there's a couple other things. There's also a link to a Singer heavy duty machine if you'd rather support Singer brand. When you do get a machine, a sewing machine, or if you already have one, please go ahead and post a picture down below and let me know how you like it. I'm curious. Okay, so first things first, you're gonna need to wind the bobbin and thread the machine. I already told you how to do that in one of my previous videos, so I'm not going to be doing that today, but I am going to be showing you the basic functions of the sewing machine and we're just going to get into it. Okay guys, so basically you're going to have a plug-in and a foot pedal. So I'm just going to go ahead and show you where to plug those in really quick. This is the one that goes into the wall, and then this one on the side is for your foot pedal. This thing right here, and that's going to go below your desk. Next thing you're going to do is you're going to turn the machine on right here. This is how you power it on and off. Now on the back of the machine, if you'll notice, there is a little switch to lower the feed dogs, and the feed dogs feed your fabric through as you're sewing. Okay guys, so keep in mind I am super stinking new, so I'm just going to go ahead and just go through the process and show you what's up. So I've got some universal needles here. I'm going to be working with cotton fabric, so I'm going to go with an 80-12. That's for a mid-weight fabric. And then you're just going to go ahead and make sure that the flat part of the needle goes towards the back always. And you insert it right here. And you make sure that the screw is loose when you insert, and then you go ahead and tighten it. I'm going to go ahead and turn my machine on, and I'm going to go ahead and thread it. I've already got a bobbin in place. Got that. Push it to the back. So I have a J foot right here. I believe this is called the monogramming foot. And basically there's a lever right here on the side, on my machine anyway, on the right hand side. You just put it, the little bar right underneath the little catch, and then press it down and it will grab it and pick it up, and now it's in place. And I will be putting a video out soon going over the most common presser feet so that you can learn how to use each one and what the function is for. Recommend that you go ahead and get a scrap piece of fabric, preferably cotton because that's easy to work with, and just practice the stitches on your machine that your machine allows you to use with just a monogramming foot. I would start there. So back to my machine really quick. I'm just going to show you how to change the stitch pattern. And basically how you do that is right here. So this is the left number and this is the right number. And so I have 100 stitch patterns on my machine. It's from 00 to 99. And so if I wanted it to be 32, I would go up to 3 over here and then up to 2 there. And that'd be a cool little decorative stitch. But I think I'm gonna go ahead and go to just a regular stitch 01. 0 and 1. Okay, and over here you can adjust the stitch length and width. So this is the length and this is the width on my machine, and this is how to turn it, the width or the length of the stitch down, and this is how you turn the length of the stitch up, and same thing down here, less wide, more wide of a stitch. And right here on your machine, or on my machine rather, you can see that this stitch is fit for the J presser foot. This little dial is for top tension, and you don't ever, at least on my machine, you don't ever want to mess with the bobbin tension. Now if you have to, I have a way that you can do that, but you don't want to do that, especially on a brother machine. And for tension, I would usually just start out around 3 or 4 and work your way up from there, just practicing the stitches on some scrap fabric to see what tension is best for the fabric that you're working with. And just for a second, I want to talk about twin needles. So these basically take the place of a cover stitch machine. And there's a few different machines that you can use in sewing. The most basic is a sewing machine and a serger. But if you want to do a bunch of stretch knit fabrics, you may want to invest in a cover stitch machine, and if you don't want to spend that kind of money, you can just invest in some twin needles and it does the same thing basically, but the cover stitch machine is a little more professional looking. So on the subject of needles, there are so many different sizes and so many different kinds. I usually use Schmetz, I believe it's called, and like I said in my previous video, the lower numbers are for lighter fabrics and the bigger numbers are for heavier fabrics. And that's really all you need to know about machine needles, other than needle placement, which I have shown you. Okay, so basically you always want to have your thread behind your machine and under the presser foot. Okay, so I'm going to go ahead and put the presser foot down right over about a centimeter, maybe 2 in from the edge of the fabric. And I'm just going to go ahead and back stitch maybe 3 to 4 times is typical. And then I'm going to press the presser foot, all the while keeping my edge of my fabric in the same position the whole time. And then back stitch, and then forward. Now you're going to go ahead and lift the hand wheel. You're going to lift the needle by turning the hand wheel towards you, and then you're going to lift the presser foot and cut the thread. And I have a thread cutter on the side of my machine right here. And basically you'll just go ahead and put the thread over that and pull. And there's our seam. Alright, so we're gonna go ahead and clean up our thread every time we sew a little bit. So a seam, we're just gonna go ahead and trim our thread here, make it nice and neat. And then you want to press with an iron every single time you make a seam as well. You just want to open up the seam. Okay, so there it is, all cleaned up. Beautiful. Okay, and basically I'm just going to show you how to press a seam, and it should be pretty self-explanatory, but you just open it up and then press it, and look at how beautiful that is. Really. Perfect. And then after you press this, you're going to want to take it to a serger. You're going to want to serge the edges because cotton frays and you don't want your fabric coming unraveled. Or you can use your machine and you can do an overlock stitch, and I'll show you that in another video, the one that I mentioned about press your feet. Okay, so let's talk about hemming for just a second here. I've got a couple of different tools that you can use. These are called hot hemmers, and this is a seam gauge. So you can use these to basically measure out the exact seam allowance that you want for your garment. You put the fabric right here. It's kind of hard to see with my setup right now. I'm gonna get better though eventually. I just, you know. So basically you press it up to meet the line, and then with these ones you can just go ahead and press with the iron right on it, and it won't do anything harmful. And it will give you an exact measurement in your seam. Same thing with the seam gauge. All you have to do is just go ahead and place the fabric, or place a little gauge where you want your seam to be. Right now I have it set at 1 inch. So you would just go ahead and place your fabric all along there and measure, make markings if you need to. My fabric is wanting to be weird, but anyway, so yeah. And then just press as you go. I do recommend that you press after every single seam that you make, and this is going to help your garments to look just much more professional and well made. I think it helps with the structuring of your garment as well. So if you haven't decided what your next project is going to be, or your first project is going to be, I highly suggest that you at least start thinking about it. Maybe go ahead and take a look at your local fabric store, or do a quick search online to find beginner-friendly patterns. I will eventually be creating a video going over how to read a pattern, so if this interests you, please go ahead and subscribe, and that will be a future video coming out. Now, I want to talk to you about thread for just a minute. There are so many different kinds of thread, okay? Starting out, you might want to just go ahead and get a polyester, because that's going to be stronger than cotton or silk or nylon or anything like that, and it's just more versatile. So I'm just going to go through and show you the different kinds of threads that I have, and maybe even test out the strength by just pulling on it. We'll see, okay? Alright, so this is a 100% polyester thread by Coats & Clark. So do a strength test here. Yeah, it's really hard to break, you see. These two are top thread for jeans. They're pretty strong, so I'm not necessarily, I don't know if I'm going to be able to break one. So let's see really quick. It's pretty thick. I don't know if you can see that, but it's pretty thick. Oh yeah, that's not gonna break too easy, so I don't think I'm gonna do that. I'll break my fingers before I break that. Woof. Ow. Okay, and I think that is, it's a Gutermann thread, and it's 100% polyester. Makes sense. Okay, so now I'm gonna get into the fun thread. So I've got some invisible thread here. It's clear, and you can do this, you can use a super thin too. You can use this for doing basically basting. You can use it for basting and a number of other things, but it is super super thin, so really easy to break. I've got some elastic thread by Gutermann, and this is good for shirring. Let me show you really quick what I mean by that. So it's used to do shirring. So if you ever want to do that, you'll want some elastic thread. And also I have some silk thread for using with silk. And this is extremely easy to break. But Yeah, and not super friendly with water. So yeah, and those are my basic threads. I don't know if I have any nylon in my collection. I think I'll go ahead and show you my huge collection of thread really quick though. So yeah, I got a lot of thread. It goes all the way back there. So since I like to sew a lot and I'm gonna go through a lot of thread, I just use serger thread on my sewing machine most of the time. So you can see I've got a spool holder and the thread to go on it. So the reason why I love my Guggenheim shears is because they can cut through a lot of fabric and thick fabric like jeans, whereas like, you know, my Fiskars are not so strong, so they won't go through that much fabric. But if I ever want to cut in bulk, I can do it with that. And sometimes using a rotary cutter won't work too well for thicker fabrics unless you get a bigger one, which even then sometimes it doesn't want to do it. So you see I've got my weight here on the fabric, and then you would just use a rotary cutter to just go ahead and cut. And we'll get into that more as I actually sew more things, but I do have a size 24 inch by 36 inch mat, and actually I have 4 of them right now because some of the garments I've made, you know, big dresses. I love the swoosh factor in dresses, so some of the dresses I've made, you know, I felt like I needed a little bit more space. I probably could have moved the fabric around and, you know, made it work, which you can. But I found that just having more pressing mats, and probably I should have just gone with a bigger size even than 24 by 36. I have the Fisker brand mats and they work really well. I do have a link in the description down below for a really cute pink and white one, and it comes with a rotary cutter, a 45 millimeter rotary cutter, and 5 blades, like 20 clips. And I mean, it's just super stinking cute, and really all you need to start, especially if you're just going to be making totes or something like that. So some of the reasons that I choose to use a rotary cutter more than my fabric shears is because anytime you lift the fabric even a little bit, it's going to affect the accuracy. It is also an easier process and a faster cutting time for me. And the ergonomics of using a rotary cutter are just better for comfort, in my opinion. Next, we're going to talk about pins and clips, and I'm just going to go ahead and get my little piece of fabric back out here, you know, that we tested on. And so anytime you press a seam or hem, you're going to want to go ahead and either clip it or pin it. So by pinning, all I mean is you just insert through one side of the 2 pieces and then out through the other. And see how nice these floral pins are. They grab so much of the fabric, you don't need to use very many of them. And like I said in my previous video, I really prefer to use clips because I mean, they're just super easy. I mean, you know. And really, you don't need to use too many of these. So, there we have it. It's ready to be sewn in place. And really, for cotton, you might want to even do an extra fold if you're going to be hemming to hide that cotton frays a lot. So this part, you might even want to just go ahead and go in, do another fold, you know, and then pin all of this after you've pressed it. As I said before, for like silk fabrics, you're gonna want like a sharper pin and maybe even a little bit smaller. So these little babies. And yeah, let's talk about organization for our pins and clips though. I love to use magnetic means of storage because you know you're not gonna lose them. You can just scour the floor with like a little magnet and it'll pick that right up for you. This thing is so stinking handy because you can just use it as you're sewing and as you're pressing your seams to either pin or take the pins out and just put it on this little magnetic plate. I do have a link in the description down below and on my website if you're interested. So for Tailor's measuring tape, I do suggest that you get more than one because they do tend to bend out of shape after use for a while. I've had this one for a long time and it started to warp a bit. But I'm just gonna go ahead and show you how to get your bust, your waist, and your hip measurements really quick. And this is something that you wanna do, the less clothes the better. But for now, of course I'm just gonna do it over my clothes and you'll get the gist of it. Okay, so bust, you want to make sure that it's level with the floor, and you're just coming around and there. The waist is at your smallest part, and of course it needs to be level with the floor all the way around. And then your hip measurement is at the thickest part of your butt and your hip, and that also needs to be level with the floor. Now, for most patterns, those are the only measurements that you're gonna need. I've created 2 PDF downloadables, measurement record sheet and visual, and you can find these on my website here, fortheloveoffabric.com, for the number 4. And then the link will also be in the description down below. Also in the description, there's a link for a 2-pack measuring tape. 1 pink and 1 black, super stinking cute, and really one is all you need to get started, but you may want to get more, like I said, because they do tend to warp over time. Let's talk about fabric markers for a second. I'm just going to go over the heat erasable ones because those ones I've recently discovered and I love them. It's amazing what they do. So I'm making a shirt for my husband at the moment. And I recently learned how to do Western style pockets. So basically, this is the piece for the flap over the pocket, one of the breast pockets. And I will be going over how to read patterns, but basically anywhere there's a marking, you'll want to place a mark on the fabric. So I've done that here and here. And the thing about heat erasable markers is that as soon as you press it, those marks are gone. And if it doesn't come out, you can usually just wash it by hand and it comes right out. But these are such a game changer. I love them. Again, I have links down in the description for the Madame Sew heat erasable markers, and they are just amazing. So I also have a link in the description for a 3-pack seam ripper, buttonhole cutter, and tailor's awl. This is a tailor's awl. You'll need it to poke holes in fabric. Of course, this is the seam ripper, Clover brand. And this is a buttonhole cutter. So you'll need this when you're making buttons and shirts and you need to cut that hole. You can use a seam ripper, but sometimes you can rip right through the stitches that make up the buttonhole, and that is not convenient. It messes up the project. Let's go over a few items that I haven't talked about yet in any previous video. So you might want a point turner eventually, and I've actually just been using a chopstick and that works just as well. I recently made a bathing suit, and I mean, to turn out these points right here, it was super helpful. I have some sticky Clover brand seam guides. You just put it on your sewing machine wherever you want your seam allowance to be, and then you can just press the fabric up against there while you are sewing, and you'll come out with a perfect seam every single time. Let's talk about fray check. So if you're ever afraid that your fabric, like around buttonholes especially, this stuff is really good because it'll just basically stop the fabric from being able to fray, and it lasts through many washes. And if you ever find that there's a little mending that needs to take place, this will work. Well guys, that's all I have for you today, and I'm gonna have more material coming out eventually, so please just bear with me. If you did like the video and you are interested in sewing and learning more with me, and I do say with me because I'm learning too. Anyway, if you liked the video, please go ahead and boop the like button. Also, please subscribe and hit the bell, because these free and simple actions really do help content creators be able to help people learn and grow. And remember, friends, you reap what you sow. Love you and hope you have an awesome day.